2025 meeting of the State Land Board to order. Welcome, everyone. We have a relatively light agenda today. We've got a couple important action items, and I would like to hand it off to our Interim Director, Bill, to walk us through the agenda.
Good morning, Governor Kotek, Secretary Reed, and Treasurer Steiner. There are two items on the agenda this morning. The first is appointing the Department of State Lands Director and setting a bond amount for the director position. The second is appointing an interim Department of State Lands Director. We'll begin by hearing public testimony on both items. One person has signed up to speak today, and two written comments were received and have been emailed to Land Board members and their Land Board assistants. And so, Governor, Mr. Huntington has the name of the person signed up to speak, and Aaron will admit the first speaker whenever you're ready.
Great, thank you, Director Ryan. And we always appreciate public testimony and appreciate the written comments as well. Our normal protocol is to have a time limit on the verbal testimony. So if we could do 3 minutes, I'll keep an eye on the clock. Jeff, if you want to introduce the one person signed up for oral testimony, and then and for that person, if when you come on screen, just state your name for the record and then let us know your thoughts. Thank you.
Thank you, Governor. I actually don't have the name in front of me. I saw it earlier today. I apologize.
That's quite all right. Does anybody, Allie, do you have that?
Governor, the person is actually not online at the moment. They have not signed in.
Okay, good to know. We can return to public testimony if in the course of the meeting the person comes back. And again, we do have written testimony that I think you all received. And so I encourage you to take a look at that. So we'll keep, we can come back to public testimony if the person shows up. And then, so let's go to the first action item. Bill, you want to introduce that one?
Yes, the first action item is the appointment of the Department of State Lands Director and setting a bond amount for the director position. And Jeff, I think you were going to introduce that.
Sure. So
item number one for those following on.
Governor.
Yes.
Are we good?
Yes, we are. Go ahead, Jeff.
Okay, I wasn't sure my band. It says my bandwidth is low on my computer, so if I fritz out, I will turn off my screen. So I was delegated the responsibility for managing the recruitment process on behalf of the Land Board earlier this spring. We ran a multi-stage recruitment process, which I think I reviewed at the last Land Board meeting, that resulted in 2 final candidates. Those finalists were in the top tier of candidates throughout the interview process at all stages with the stakeholders and with staff and of different agencies that did interviews. So we were thrilled to have 2 strong candidates at the end. Individual Land Board members conducted individual interviews and then had an executive session to discuss the candidates and their thoughts. And then after that executive session, conducted another executive session with all 3 Land Board members present to interview the 2 finalists again. Based on everything I observed from those interviews and the entire process, I'm here today to recommend that the Land Board appoint Caitlin Lovell to serve for a term of 4 years as the new director of the Department of State Lands. And that appointment would be at a salary set consistent with state policy and the position announcement that was published at the beginning of the recruitment process. And that as part of that appointment of the new director, the board is also required by statute to fix a penal sum for the director's position to have a fidelity bond. And in consultation with agency staff and Department of Administrative Services, determined that the amount of that bond should be set at $100,000. So that would be my recommendation today.
Thank you, Jeff, for that review. And before I take a motion on the recommendation, are there any comments from my fellow Land Board members?
Madam Chair, I just appreciate the conversations that we were all able to have and the thoughtful process that led us here, and excited to move forward together.
Thank you, Mr. Secretary. Madam Treasurer, anything on your end?
What he said.
Thank you. And I would echo all of that. I want to thank our staff and land board advisors for helping. It's always a bit of a complicated process by the nature of the quorum requirements for the land board for us to manage a public process to do a recruitment, and just really appreciate the hard work and excited about the possibility of working with Caitlin. And, you know, I think a public process has resulted in a strong candidate for our new director. And with that, I'd entertain a motion, Mr. Secretary.
Madam Chair, I move approval of the recommendation. We proceed to appoint Ms. Lovell as director, the term as described, and with the bond as described by Mr. Hunter.
And I would second that motion.
Thank you. We have a motion and a second. Are there any objections to that? Not seeing any. Motion approved. Congratulations, Ms. Lovell, as our incoming director. Really appreciate you and look forward to working with you. With that, we'll move on to action item 2 because of the start date. We will need to confirm an interim, do a little process here for Bill and in the interim here. So action item number 2. And is that Jeff? I think you should do that
Yep.
one.
That would be me too, Governor.
Yeah.
Members of the land board. So this item number 2, because of the way the statutes are constructed for the department, unless absent a formal appointment of an interim director, in the absence of a director, there's an issue with being able to sign contracts and make certain payments without clear authority coming from the land board for the interim director. So on this action item, I am recommending to you that you appoint an interim director of the department to be Bill Ryan until such time as the new director takes her permanent position. We anticipate that might be around the beginning of August, could be a little later because we are waiting for this vote before we finalize terms with Ms. Lovell. And in the appointment of Bill, there also would be the need to authorize a bond similar to that for the permanent director.
Thank you, Jeff. Continuity of leadership and transition is really important, so we want to get this right by the book. So are there any questions about any of this process or any of the details? Not seeing any then, I will entertain a motion.
Madam Chair, I move approval of the recommendation, the appointment of Mr. Ryan as interim director, and the establishment of the bond as described.
And I would second that motion.
Thank you, Mr. Secretary. Thank you, Madam Treasurer. We have a motion and a second. Any further questions or comments on this? Any objections? Seeing none, motion approved. Thank you, Bill, for stepping up and keeping everything moving forward. We very much appreciate that. And just for the technicalities, after the conclusion of this meeting, I will do the oath of office and all the official paperwork to make that official. So we can do that. Director Ryan, anything else for the good of the order? And I don't know if our one testimony sign up has shown up. I know we've moved through things quickly, so.
Governor, nothing else other than public testimony.
Okay. Jeff, did you have anything to add? I see you.
So, I will say, Governor, that at the conclusion of the meeting, after this meeting adjourns, we'll ask you to stay on so you can administer the oath to Bill, so he can have that formal responsibility.
Fantastic. Thank you. And just colleagues, you probably saw that the testimony, from my understanding, was related to the activities out at the Sandy River Delta. We can look forward to a future conversation about that. No updates today on that. And are there any, our next meeting is scheduled for August, I believe.
We're looking at possibly canceling the August meeting if the land board is amenable to that. We don't have any pressing agency business that needs to come before the board in August.
Madam Governor.
Yeah.
If that's the case, because the Sandy River Delta issue has been a matter of some public concern, if it's not unreasonable, it might be helpful for the department to publish something somewhere or submit a formal letter to the land board about this that we can put on our website to give an update to the public about that, because my understanding is it's now moving forward better and there's an appropriate contractor in place who is able to help and provide services for the people who had been camping there, which is really important. And I think we'd all agree on that, and that we're now in the place where we can move forward. But I think a letter from Mr. Ryan to the land board that we can then put on the land board site might be appropriate so the public understands that we are making progress.
I think
Yeah.
that's an appropriate request. We will have I would at least characterize it as a status update, because there have been a lot of conversations. Our office has been leaning in as well and just trying to make sure that as managers of that land, that DSO and the land board is apprised and moving in a reasonable direction. So yes, we could work on that and make sure that gets distributed. In the likelihood we won't have an August meeting, because if there's not anything pressing, given everyone's schedules for August, it's probably best to, and then our next meeting would be October, I believe. That doesn't preclude us
Gives
from
Lovell a
having,
chance to settle in too.
right, doesn't preclude us from having, conversations with our advisors and conversations directly with the director individually. So, so thank you, everyone. And with that, I will adjourn today's land board meeting at 10:12. Really appreciate everyone being here, and congratulations, Caitlin. And here we go. Thank you, Bill. Really
Congrats.
appreciate you
Welcome.
stepping up. All right, take care, everybody. Bye.
Thank
Bye.
you.